Hey, night owls! It's the storyteller here, cruising through the darkness on another midnight ride. But tonight, we are diving into something a bit different. Why we are all so fascinated by ghost stories, even those of us who don't believe in them. And why does the dark still gives us the creeps? Buckle up, it's going to be a spooky ride. As I'm riding here, surrounded by shadows, I can't help but think about how our ancestors must have felt in the dark. No streetlights, no headlights, just the moon and stars if they were lucky. From an evolutionary standpoint, fear of the dark made a lot of sense. Our early human ancestors were not apex predators. In fact, we were pretty tasty snacks for a lot of nocturnal hunters. Those who were cautious at night, who feared the dark and what might be lurking in it, were most likely to survive and pass on their genes. This ingrained fear of the dark and the unknown has stuck with us. Even though most of us no longer have to worry about becoming a midnight snack for a saber toothed tiger, but our brains are still wired to be on high alert in the dark. Every rustle, every shadow could be a potential threat. Now, let's talk about ghosts. Why are we so fascinated by them? Even hardcore skeptics often enjoy a good ghost story. It's a universal human experience. Every culture has its own ghost stories and spirits. Part of it is the thrill. Ghost stories allow us to experience fear in a controlled environment. It's like a roller coaster for our emotions. Scary, but ultimately safe. They also help us process complex ideas about mortality and what happens after death. But there's more to it. Our brains are pattern seeking machines. We are hardwired to find meaning in random stimuli. This tendency, called pareidolia, is why we see faces in clouds or hear words in random noise. In the dark, with limited sensory input, our brains work overtime to fill in the gaps. Sometimes those gaps get filled with spooky explanations. Think about it. You're alone in a dark house, you hear a creak. Your logical brain knows it's probably just the house settling. But that primal part of your brain, the part that kept your ancestors alive, whispers, what if it's not? This is where the power of suggestion comes in. If you're in a place that's supposed to be haunted, your brain is primed to interpret any unusual sensation as ghostly. A cold draft becomes a spirit's touch. A random shadow turns into an apparition. Culture plays a huge role too. The ghosts we imagine are shaped by the stories we grow up with, the movies we watch, the books we read. A ghost in Japan might look very different from a ghost in Mexico or Ghana. You know, talking about ghost stories brings back some vivid childhood memories. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, I used to visit my village in India during summer vacations. Man, those were different times. No street lights, often no electricity, just the vast, inky darkness of the countryside nights. But here's the thing, despite being scared of the dark, I'd always pester my aunts to tell me ghost stories. I can still picture it. All of us huddled around a flickering lamp, its weak light barely pushing back the shadows. And there I'd be wide eyed, hanging on every word as my aunts spun tales of spirits and specters. I remember being absolutely terrified, especially when the story ended and I had to walk back to my room in the dark. Every creak of the old house, every rustle in the trees outside became a potential ghost. But you know what? I kept asking for more stories night after night. It's funny how we are drawn to what scares us, isn't it? That mix of fear and fascination. It's a powerful thing. I think those nights, scary as they were, are part of why I'm out here now, embracing the darkness on these midnight rides. So, why do some people believe in ghosts despite the lack of scientific evidence? Well, personal experience is a powerful thing. If you felt something you can't explain, it's hard to shake that belief. Plus, the idea that our loved ones might still be around in some form can be comforting. As for me, riding alone at night, I can feel those ancient instincts kicking in. Every shadow seems a bit more menacing, but understanding where these fears come from helps me manage them. I know that the real dangers on this ride are things like distracted drivers or road hazards, not ghosts or monsters. So, the next time you're spooked by a ghost story or feeling uneasy in the dark, remember it's just your brain doing what it evolved to do, keeping you safe even if the dangers it's watching for are long gone. Until next time, keep your wheels turning and your mind open, and maybe leave a light on when you get home, just in case. Ride safe.